there's a couple of questions that have come through on the Q&A and in the live chat. So lots of great discussion already happening. Lots of engagement. Maybe I'll start with the questions that have come through for our first presenter, Jordan. Jordan, let's see here. So the first question comes from George Lassard, and he would like to know, what interaction has the AFN had with Northwest Territories Housing Corporation?
So the majority of our kind of government advocacy to date has been with employment and I'm hearing the stream over myself right now.
I think you should be okay. There's a bit of a delay.
Okay. I think it just might be coming through somebody's, yeah, okay. So I'll try, it's a little distracting. I'll maybe try to turn down my volume and then I'll speak without, yeah. So the majority of the government advocacy that we've been doing to date is with Employment and Social Development Canada, which is a federal agency, and we have a co-development process in place with them, and the purpose of that is to look at the Reaching Home program, which currently has Indigenous focused funding streams, and look at how additional funding can be created to better suit the needs specifically of First Nations. And I know that they're currently engaged in parallel processes with Metis and Inuit. In the case of the Northwest Territories, we have a relationship with Dene Nation, and we're working with them on a series of engagement sessions. We haven't had any direct relationships or communication with the Northwest Territories government or their agencies. And I know that in the Northwest Territories, there are differences in how kind of federal jurisdiction and territorial jurisdiction interact in the way First Nations receive services. So I think as we move forward in our engagement discussions, that'll be an important conversation and something we'll have to understand how those interactions work, to make sure that there aren't any gaps in the way that our action plan is able to advocate for First Nations in the territories and in the Northwest Territories specifically. So that'll be a discussion we'll have to have going forward.
Great, thank you. And he actually had a follow-up question about how AFN dealt with internet-based surveys when the majority of folks in the territories do not have access to the internet.
Yeah, so the internet-based survey that we currently have active, it's I recognize that there's limitations to kind of the reach that it has, because we're also dealing with, we want to be hearing from people with personal experience with homelessness, and that's another population that may have in some cases limited access to the internet. So kind of within the context of the pandemic, and we have sort of limited ability to organize kind of in-person engagement sessions or whatever that might have looked like. Otherwise, we're kind of doing what we can to have as wide of a reach as possible, while kind of maybe looking towards the future when things settle down with the pandemic, to look at other approaches that might allow us to fill in some of those gaps in where our current activities are reaching. I will say that the survey is not the only activity that we're organizing right now. We're also planning a series of regional engagement sessions. We have an external consultant who's in the process of organizing those for us right now, and those will be taking place in the new year. Those are primarily with First Nations leadership and staff, but I recognize too that doesn't necessarily fill that gap of those who don't have access to internet being able to access those sessions. So it's something we're mindful of, and I think we'll be looking for more ways to increase, particularly our reach within community and people who might not be able to access the current kind of communications efforts that we're putting out, but it's kind of it's going to be an ongoing process and something that evolves as we go.
That's great. Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge, isn't it? But it's good to have different ways of connecting with folks. So that's great. Audrey Hill had a clarifying question. She actually wanted to know if you could repeat what the third phase was. She had missed it.
Right. So I mentioned a three-phase approach to the work that we're doing to develop a homelessness action plan. So the first phase was research, and some of the other presentations that followed mine were kind of the result of some of the work that we've been doing as part of that phase. And then the second phase is engagement, as I mentioned, the survey and the regional engagement sessions. And then the third phase would be actually drafting and co-developing with our government partners the action plan, and then looking towards implementation and resourcing and whatever else that might look like.
Great. I think that may be all the questions for you at the moment, Jordan, but folks, feel free to use the Q&A box too if there are additional questions.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and then we had a question for you, Jess. Did you want to maybe share when the lit review may be ready for publication and where folks may be able to read it?
Then that's a great question. I may have to loop Jordan in on this as well. So we did write this on behalf of the Assembly of First Nations. So Jordan, I'm going to pass it on to you, and hopefully you're able to provide a little bit more information on that as well.
Yeah, well, currently we're in the process of doing some very final review on the work that we received, and in order for us to post it on our website, which we're hoping to do, we need to get it translated. That's going to take a little bit of time. So especially right now, we're in the time leading up to our Special Chiefs Assembly in December. So our kind of our resources who would do the translation work for us are very much kind of wrapped up in that at the moment. So yeah, so our hope is in the new year to have them available on our website in some form, either a summary or the full document. It might be possible for us to get a summary up sooner than the full document, but I'll also maybe take that question back and see if we can, because I know the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, who has their own website where they host research. I might take that question back and see if we can allow that to be posted on the COH's website before we kind of go through that process on our side to ensure that it's available sooner. I'll find out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, there's lots of great discussion happening in the chat box. Monique, I see you've been addressing quite a few questions. Did you want to sort of recap sort of some of the discussion that you're having here for folks that aren't following the chat?
Trying to push mute. Yes, for sure. Lots of really great questions and discussion. And I think in particular, knowing what's on the map, who's on the map, who has access to the map, lots of really great questions about access to information, access to the data, and to the listings itself. It's definitely something that we continue to work on as we move across Canada. This work is fairly new for us in making sure that we are doing the best in terms of reconciliation and getting Indigenous, both urban and First Nations information included in our system. But we do know that there's still a lot of advocacy that needs to happen so that communities do have access. And one of the things that's really on my mind as a VP here at Help Seeker is how do we best support, advocate for that, making sure that it's not another gap that we fall into. We know at our company that digitization and the fourth industrial revolution of technology is so huge, and we really need to make sure that we are working closely with our government reps, with our partners like AFN and like communities to really push that infrastructure change, because eventually it's going to be more and more of this is going to be online. And so how do we best support each other? And we do our best to work in our communities that we have strong partnerships and collaboration with, whether that's providing paper copies of things. Sade works quite closely with a lot of our communities and comes across this as well, that we work in the best way that we can to provide that either newsletter style or other ways in which people can get connected in, and also for others to know what is available within their communities, within the surrounding areas for sure too. So yeah, lots of really great discussion, and we definitely learned a lot ourselves in participating in this work, and we're really grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. And one follow-up question, which I think you touched on a little bit in the chat, but Sarah was first wanted to say that presentation was fantastic, and she was wondering how to enact OCAP principles with urban First Nation groups that may not be connected to their community and may be coming from diverse communities. Who do they partner with? And does the OCAP training provide more guidance with this?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I know for us too, as we start to build more partnerships with urban Indigenous community groups and service providers, really, because it's about what are the services, programs, benefits that are available for all peoples, but in particular for our communities, to know, especially when they're moving, from off reserve into the cities, and where to go and how to support. OCAP is really about, it's based on a rights-based sovereignty approach, and so that information and the OCAP principles are designed really to support a very specific, set, the First Nations, based on the collective rights that we hold as nation members. When it doesn't mean that we are no longer protected when we go into the urban setting, but there needs to be like a clear framework that organizations should really develop, adapt in honor of these principles that have been stated, so that there is, whenever we have data, whether you are a friendship center, whether you are a mental health and addictions clinic, when we're collecting information that is at the community level, where data can be collected in such a way to say all these people are from Siksika Nation, and it becomes like a culmination of information that can identify a community, that should go to Siksika Nation, and they should say, we have this, level of information, to not share it out, and to make sure you're following OCAP principles. The FNIGC, who does the training, are super amazing, and they've done, extra sessions for us, training sessions with groups, little workshops, knowing what the kind of work that we do. So it's a little bit of adaptation, and really it means that you got to do the work. Everybody has to do the work. Service providers, governments, companies who work in any of these sectors, they need to actually strategize and make a plan so that it can work, and know that it's designed for this specific need, but we can adapt it to work in other settings.
Great, yeah, that's a really, really important point to end on. There don't seem to be any additional questions at the moment, so I wondered if our presenters had any last words before we wrap up. Anything you wanted to share you didn't get to in your short presentations?
Sade, did you want? You did a lot of the work, so I just want to make sure you had an opportunity. If there's anything you wanted to share.
I don't know what to say really. Like, I think we covered a lot in the presentation. There were a lot of really great insights that we didn't get to cover. Nothing I have right in front of me though, but yeah, no, it's just really important, like after doing this work and learning, so much about, access to supports, and how First Nations communities are communicating what they have with their members. Like, some members are aware of what's on reserve, some aren't, and there's a lot of gaps we still need to fill in supporting our nations, and supporting, on reserve and off reserve, just building those lines of communication, so that people they know what's out there. They feel comfortable to access supports. They feel confident to access supports. And we just have a mechanism. So here at Help Seeker, like we have a mechanism that can support that, and that's, you know, up to the First Nations to like just honoring OCAP. You know, we want to be there for support. We want to benefit everybody, but that's, you know, there's just more conversations that need to be had, and every reserve is unique. Every reserve is different. Every reserve has their own government that runs their own way, that needs to be respected, honored, and learned about. So yeah, this work just goes so deep, and it's just been an honor to contribute what we can to the AFN's action plan to support First Nations housing and homelessness, because it's just such a great need, and there's so much work that needs to be done. So it's hard to kind of wrap up all my thoughts in a short amount of time, but I just really encourage everybody to look at that training through OCAP, because what it does is it puts the power back into the hands of our First Nations, and they really, you know, they get the say, like, you know, why are you doing this research? What narrative are you trying to tell? And allowing them to benefit from anything that we do with them is so important. So just a lot of great learning, and I don't know, I can't explain the feelings I get when I get to engage with this work and just support First Nation sovereignty, because we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you all. Any other last words?
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for
go ahead.
the space. And thank you for having us. And Jordan, thank you for the excellent work and the partnership.
Yeah, likewise, I just wanted to thank Monique, Shade, and Jessica. Like, I think this for us, I think data is a really important advocacy tool, and it's a really important aspect of it's kind of the foundation of the work we're hoping to do to advocate for better supports and services for First Nations, and better federal programs, and anything else that we can accomplish through this action plan. So going into this work, we recognized that there were a lot of data gaps, and I think there still are, but I think we've made some inroads in understanding what they are, and even addressing some of those, and understanding how homelessness impacts our people, First Nations specifically, and that's going to be the starting point to understand how we can target our advocacy and advocate for better services.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Jordan, Jess, Monique, and Shade, for your great presentations. And thank you to the audience for your questions and participation this morning. Two things before we go. If you could complete the evaluation of this session, you can find it under the video player beside the discussion tab. That would be much appreciated. And then following this session, we have today's keynote by Dr. Andrew Bazari. It'll start in about 15 minutes at 12:30 Eastern, so don't miss that. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.